Hello, my name is Nicholas Leifker, and welcome to Management 409, Operations Management. Before we can embark on any learning, we need to understand why we study a particular piece of material. After all, you're taking this course. You're taking this course for a reason, in many cases because it's required. Well, why is it required? Why is it necessary for us to study this material? And hopefully much of the questions in regards to that will be answered within this introduction. After all, before any learning occurs, before any undertaking occurs, we need to have some understanding of why. Why do we do this? Well, hopefully that will be accomplished in this particular session, in the introduction, before we get on to the details of operations management. Well, as for who I am, again, I'm Nick Leifker. Once upon a time, I studied chemical engineering. That was a long time ago. Anyway, I graduated with a degree in chemical engineering from Texas A&M in 1998. I never worked a day as a chemical engineer in my life, unfortunately. I didn't have that opportunity. However, I did work as a mechanical engineer for many years. I worked as a mechanical engineer first as an intern, and yes, I do think it's important for students to get that work experience. So I worked as a mechanical engineer for several years, designing conveyor systems, and coolers for bakeries. And then, around 2001 or so, I realized that my career started to stagnate, so I decided that I'd go back to school. And some things happened, and I ended up going back to my alma mater of Texas A&M to get my MBA, which I achieved in 2004. Now, the beauty of that time getting my MBA was that I also worked as a teaching assistant and discovered what it meant to be a professor, what it was like to live an academic life, and decided that might be fun. So, after a year of working as an analyst in the retail energy industry, I then went back for my doctorate and went to the University of Iowa for that, and got my doctorate in business administration, specifically in management sciences, in 2010. And I've been here at St. John Fisher College ever since. Now, there are a few things that I want you to take away from these sessions. I want you to remember from these sessions. First, why are we here? It's a good idea to have some grounding as to why we study operations before we start getting into the thick of things. Also, we're going to talk about problem solving some. After all, with problem solving, it's important that you have some sort of framework, some sort of method by which to look at problems, by which to address problems. We won't be having presentations in this class, unfortunately. That particular part of this slide is a legacy of my regular class. However, I do think it's important that we understand how problems are solved and look at how problems are solved. We're also going to look at inputs and outputs. So what are they? Why are they important? And as an extension of those inputs and outputs, we look at productivity. What is it? And why do we need to increase it? We're also going to look at goods and services. And goods are, of course, physical, tangible items. Services are more intangible acts. But what we're going to find when we actually look at it is that the two are not as separate as we might think. And then we're going to finish this introduction with a look at the progression of operations, how we go from one person working by themselves at a desk to an interconnected, interrelated world. Now, to understand what I do with the book and why. The book is a custom text. It's available at the St. John Fisher College bookstore. And the cost is probably somewhere around $100. When I bought my copy in the fall of 2012, it was $99.65. I'm not sure what it is today. That said, what I do with regard to the book is I take chapters from texts that I think address the subjects fairly well. Not perfectly, because any educator has their own quirks and their own preferences. when it comes to a particular topic. However, I've tried to tailor the book that I use to the material that I cover. More to the point, I try to stick to that material and not deviate from it. More specifically, what I mean by that is, if you were to buy your typical textbook, for instance, if you were to go to the RIT bookstore and buy Operations Management by Bill Stevenson. Stevenson is an RIT faculty member. You'll find that it costs probably twice as much than this book that we will be using in the course. And it also covers twice as much. That said, I think it's important when it comes to the material we use in a course and the cost that we use in a course that it has some purpose, that it has some usefulness. If I were to use Bill Stevenson's book, and Bill Stevenson's book is fairly good, we will be using several chapters from it, but I think that it's best to use the tools that we need and to not have to pay for the tools that we don't need. So thus we have a custom text that we use for this particular course. So, why? Why operations management? To understand why, we need to start with one very simple, very basic question. How do companies make money? Well, what companies generally do to make money is they take stuff, raw materials of some type, inputs of some type, and they transform them somehow. They transform them into something that is hopefully more valuable than what they have coming in. This transformation, this is what we call the process. And you will be hearing me speak of the process a lot more over the course of the next 7 weeks, because it is this process that makes companies money. As such, we need to make sure that this process is well managed, well maintained, and how we do that will cover much of the attention that we give to this course. So, as an example, we have an automotive company. The automotive company has parts, parts that they put into their vehicle. They, of course, have labor. You need people to build these cars. You have equipment. After all, it's kind of hard for people to build a car without the proper tools. You also have to have land. You need some place for these people to work. And also you have various types of overhead, various types of management that are involved with regard to keeping the company running. Also, you might need to pay for electricity and the like. So there's a lot of costs involved, a lot of inputs involved with regard to this car, this automobile. So what comes out? Well, after the process has transformed all of these materials, you have a finished good, you have a car, you have a truck, you have a van, you have whatever vehicle this car company is building. So, now we get to the why of operations. What happens if the outputs, what happens if what is being produced isn't worth as much as the inputs? Well, what happens is you lose money. Your company starts to lose money. And ultimately, if the problems aren't fixed, that company will go under, will go bankrupt. So we need to make sure that the process is well managed. More to the point, that we continually improve the process for reasons that we'll see in just a minute. Now, the type of process that a company has is largely dependent on what that company offers. For instance, take a bakery. A bakery will, of course, have yeast, have flour, have water, have sugar, have all of the ingredients that go into a loaf of bread. They'll also have equipment. They'll have, of course, bread pans in which to bake these. They'll have ovens to, well, first you have a proofer that causes the bread to rise, then you have an oven that bakes it. Then, of course, you have various conveyors, various other equipments. That was really good grammar, wasn't it? Various other pieces of equipment. But at the end of the day, what you have is this beautiful loaf of bread that someone is willing to buy. Well, how about an investment bank? Well, you have money, and of course you have expertise. You have investment expertise. And hopefully that money gets invested wisely, at a proper interest rate. And then the output is hopefully more money, hopefully a successful investment. So you have money, you have expertise, you have management skills, you have financial skills, and you generate more money as a result. Now, a grocer, this is kind of interesting because in many ways the inputs and the outputs are very much the same. It's not like the grocer is going to make its own Twinkies. It's not like the grocer is going to make its own food for the most part, although it does do a little bit of that. For the most part, the grocer gets finished goods. So what does the grocer provide? What sort of process does the grocer provide? What the grocer provides is location, convenience. Consider your typical shopping list. Consider everything that you would normally put on your average shopping list. Now, instead of going to your local Wegmans or Tops, imagine if you had to go to each farm, each location separately. You had to go to one farm to get your eggs. You had to go to another farm to get your milk. You had to go to a baker to get your bread. And these are the basics. This is the easy stuff. If you had to go to all of these different places, well, you'd be spending a lot more time than if you just had to go to the grocery store. That's what a grocer provides in terms of value. It provides this transportation. It provides this location by which a person can conveniently purchase all of the things that they need for their business, or for their home, or for their business. Now, a temp agency. Some of you are familiar with what a temp agency is, some of you aren't. But what a temp agency does is it brings several inputs together. It brings people who are looking for a job, and it brings companies who are trying to temporarily fill a position. And it also provides expertise in matching them up, matching up a person with a particular set of skills with a company that needs those skills. So the temp agency takes these temporary jobs from the companies, takes people who are looking for positions, matches them together. And the output is a filled job position. And, of course, the temp agency takes a commission for filling that position. Now, the last one, a venture capital firm, this one's kind of interesting because what you have, well, first, for inputs, you have money. In a lot of cases, you need money to make more money. And you also have companies that maybe aren't doing so well, that maybe are running into some trouble. And also you have expertise. You have financial expertise as well as management expertise. So what does the venture capital firm do? It purchases these companies that are in some distress. It goes in, hopefully fixes the problems with these companies, makes them better, makes them more economically viable. And so the output is a far more successful company than what the venture capital firm initially purchased. So they take the management expertise and financial expertise that they have, they take these companies that aren't doing so well, and of course they take money, and through their processes, they hopefully generate a company that is far healthier and far more valuable than what they initially purchased. So, in conclusion, the inputs and outputs for a company can vary widely, and it depends greatly on what that particular company is trying to accomplish, what value it is trying to generate. So, if we've talked about the inputs and the outputs and how those can vary, what's the middle? What is the process? Well, the process is transformation. It is anything that changes our inputs in some form or another that hopefully generates more value. So, location, shipping an item from one location to another, that is a transformation. That is, in many cases, a part of our process. We could have an actual physical change to take, say, flour, take sugar, take water, take yeast, and change it into a finished good, into a loaf of bread. We could have assembly, taking a set of diverse parts and bringing them together into a finished product. Or we could have a change of information, taking a set of data and collating them and hopefully finding some valuable information, some valuable wisdom that we can create from that. So the transformation, the process, that also depends greatly on what our company needs, on what our company is trying to accomplish. So, we have inputs, we have outputs that are hopefully more valuable. So how do we measure that change? How do we measure what the process gets done? Well, one of the tools that we use to measure this is what we call productivity. It is a measure of the improvement that the process creates, that the process generates. It is simply output over input. More to the point is the value of the output relative to the value of its inputs. So I write here as productivity equals output of salable units over input. Sometimes it's just given as output over input. However, I think it important to state that salable units part, because what is the value of a product that doesn't sell? What is the value of a product that is useless, that is not going to help someone else? So what we do needs to be of sufficient quality, of sufficient worth, that someone is perhaps willing to pay us money for it. Now we go a little further and we talk about total factor productivity. Here we actually start giving dollar signs, dollar values to the output and the input. So total factor productivity is simply the dollar value of the outputs divided by the cost of all the inputs. Now, this productivity, this leads us to why we have to study operations management, have some knowledge of operations management. You see, businesses are almost never static. In fact, businesses are never static. Things change. Things always change. And because of that, what usually ends up happening within an industry is that companies make changes, they make improvements to their business, make improvements to their processes. And if our competitors are making things faster, better, and cheaper, it won't be long before we are left behind, if we are not careful. As such, within our businesses, we have to increase our productivity. We have to either increase the value of our outputs or decrease the value of our inputs, because our competitors will be doing the same thing. Now, it's important to note something here, and this goes back to that productivity formula. Productivity was output over input. Well, we decide the input. We as a company decide the input. The output, the value of the output, is ultimately decided by the customer. So, if your competitors start selling it for a lower cost than what you can sell it for, if you're no longer able to make a profit on what you sell because your competitors are able to sell it for cheaper. At that point, your company is in serious, serious trouble. So, why operations management? Because we must constantly increase the productivity of our business so that we are able to ultimately sell our product, keep the product valuable, and hopefully keep our customers happy. Now, there are other reasons besides that. One of the big ones is that we have decisions to make. We have problems that need to be solved. And the tools that we use within operations management allow us to solve these. So, what we do is we can plan, we can manage, we can make decisions with regard to the use of resources in our business. So, if we want to know how, if we need to increase the capacity of our factories, of our facilities, well, we can use the tools that are available in operations management to let us know if we need to do that and to let us know how to do that. So, why operations management? Well, as callous as it sounds, we need operations management to keep the wolf away from the door. To keep our business healthy, to keep our business running, and to keep our business safe. Now, the tools that we use within operations management? Well, those tools I will talk about in the next video. Until you watch that, be well, take care, and have a good day.